Stop what you're doing. The fact that you discovered this message at this precise time is not a coincidence. It is a divine appointment. You've been feeling the earth shake under your feet while seeing a quiet, unseen conflict unfold around you. You've seen the masks, heard the murmurs, and felt the synchronized energy of a group working against you. You may have felt alone, outnumbered, and on the edge of fatigue, wondering if the world had forgotten you. But I'm here to tell you that what you're seeing isn't your ruin. It's your adversary's spectacular, predetermined, and unstoppable collapse. The cosmic balances are tilting, and every deceptive deed, falsehood, and assault is now reverberating back to its origin with lethal accuracy. Stay with us, for this is more than just a message. It's your front row seat to the greatest spectacle on earth, the self-destruction of those who dared to play games with an anointed spirit. Hello, anointed ones. There's an old saying that has echoed down the ages, a piece of folk wisdom that has now ripened into a powerful prophecy for this very season. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Right now, as you read these words, an entire group of people is cashing in their karmic winnings, one by one, like a long line of dominoes collapsing under the unbearable weight of their own malicious intentions. What is occurring in front of your eyes is not random chaos. It's a beautifully planned, divinely coordinated event. Rigorous research on human behavior and group dynamics have statistically proved that any collective founded on deception, jealousy, and sabotage is doomed to fail far quicker than any group united by a real, shared, and good goal. Why is this an indisputable law? Because treachery consumes itself. It does not need an external adversary or force to destroy itself. Instead, it consumes its own creators from inside. You are going to experience a deep truth in real time. The same individuals who presented themselves as untouchable, who laughed the loudest while huddled in shadows planning your downfall, are now tripping on the banana peels they set out. Their demise isn't only on the horizon, it's already underway, a quiet avalanche that has began its plunge. What is the most wonderful, freeing aspect of this whole spectacle? You do not need to raise a single finger. You are not the judge, jury, or executioner in this holy courtroom. The vast performance is hosted by life itself, the cosmos, and God. And believe me, it has saved the finest seats in the house only for you. Front row seats to a heavenly comedy. So grab your popcorn, relax down, and get ready to experience something considerably more gratifying than the ordinary drama. This is cosmic irony mixed with poetic justice, as every single player who arrogantly thought they were running the game is now, and painfully, learning the oldest law in existence. You play, you lie, you pay. 1. Every player forgets. The game was rigged from the beginning. This is the underlying fact they didn't see coming, the blind hole in their collective ego. They really felt they were intelligent, united, or brutally manipulative enough to turn the cosmos to their will. However, the moment they made the intentional choice to play dirty against you, an anointed soul functioning under divine protection, the conclusion of their game was already determined. This wasn't because you were perfect, faultless, or free of challenges. It was sealed because some actions in life have unavoidable repercussions. When individuals choose to move with jealousy, deception, and venom, they are not crafting their own story. They are naively committing to a pre-written tragedy, a cosmic drama with only public exposure and complete failure as conceivable outcomes. That is exactly what makes their hubris so deeply ironic. They swaggered toward the battlefield, believing that the odds were heavily in their favor. They were quite certain that their numbers, whispered smear campaigns, covert affiliations, and precise planning would result in a quick and definitive win. However, the number of troops on the field does not determine the outcome of a spiritual battle, a game of energy. It is determined by alignment. They were connected with devastation, and the global rule is clear. Destruction never, ever rewards its perpetrators in the long term. They failed to see that while they believed they were methodically crafting a plan against you, they were really erecting an impenetrable trap around themselves, brick by brick. Every lie they uttered was a bar to their own prison. Every strategy they devised was like a stone sealing their own grave. Every incorrect step they took was another lock clicking shut on their own destiny. The main deceit in their thinking was that they thought their deeds were concealed in the shadows, that their whispers would vanish into thin air, and that no one would ever be intelligent enough to connect the dots. They believed they could play you, discard you, and walk away unharmed, uninjured, and triumphant. But a divinely rigged game has a particularly painful and beautiful feature. It often gives the wicked the illusion of victory, if only for a short time. It permits them to get engrossed in a false feeling of control, blinded by their own arrogance just before the whole board turns. That brief, deceptive sensation of power was the source of their downfall. While they were laughing at your expense, celebrating their alleged successes in secret, and smugly believing they had you surrounded and conquered, the cosmic clock was already counting down to zero on their impending demise. And now, the wonderful irony is being revealed for all to see. The same weapons that they used against you are now exposing them. The intimate discussions they had in the dark are now coming to light. The frail ties they formed via mutual deception are now disintegrating and collapsing under the slightest demand. The false, inflated assurance they wore like armor is being consumed by a reality that is now completely beyond their control. What seemed to be a sophisticated, perfect scheme has now become a devastating trail of evidence that they will never be able to erase. And the worst part about it all, they thought the game was about you. But it was never, ever really about you. It was always a test of their own character, and their decisions triggered a divine, self-correcting mechanism that was never intended to let them triumph. 2. Survival is not about being untouchable. It is about outlasting. This is when the group's calculations went wrong. They naively imagined that strength was determined by the number of people they could assemble to oppose you or the volume of their combined voices. However, true soul-level survival has nothing to do with the size of the mob or the amount of noise they can make. True endurance, as created in the furnaces of spiritual battle, is about who can endure the longest when the pressure never stops, the heat never cools, and the storm refuses to pass. In the end, quiet perseverance will always triumph over showy displays of might. They believed they could gradually wear you down by approaching you as a group, a wolf pack of negativity. Their rationale was deceptively simple. If one person's onslaught cannot break you, certainly 5, 10, or more can. However, they were unaware of a fundamental, unchangeable spiritual law. The more individuals you collect in a negative spirit, the weaker the whole structure. Why? Because communities formed on the flimsy foundations of jealousy and hatred are constantly kept together by volatile, fleeting emotions rather than genuine, unwavering belief. When actual pressure is applied, financial hardship, public scrutiny, a change in social dynamics, those fragile feelings vanish like mist in the early light, and their apparently strong group is found to lack any backbone at all. Meanwhile, the person they constantly attempted to crush is still standing. Endurance is not glamorous. It's not showy. And that is exactly why they underestimated you. They misinterpreted your capacity to just keep going ahead day after day for something commonplace, perhaps even weakness. However, survival is never an easy task when you are intentionally outlasting conspiracies that were intended to entirely eliminate you. You did not need to engage in loud, public fights to demonstrate your might. You only had to be constant in your faith, purpose, and alignment. While they squandered their valuable life force energy worrying about you, competing with you, and attempting to psychically drain you, you carefully conserved your own. You were focused on your own journey, healing, and connection to the divine. That is why they are disintegrating, one by one. Their demise is being revealed in tiny but important ways. Relationships within their group, which seem to be rock solid, are now obviously deteriorating. Friendships inside their group are becoming strained and plagued with distrust, as mistrust spreads like a disease wherever envy exists. The energy they formerly used on attacking you has now turned inward, devouring them alive from the inside out. They can no longer maintain the same ferocious intensity they began with because hatred is a weak fuel. It burns hot and fast, yet it rapidly exhausts its host. And while others are running on empty, you remain steady, going on with a calm, divinely generated power that they cannot understand. That is the true meaning of outlasting. It is not about leaving the struggle with no scars. It's about showing that even with wounds, you're still here and whole, while their whole foundation has crumbled into dust. Survival is not always clean, but its triumph is unmistakable. You are still in the game, but they have been disqualified. 3. Judgment does not arrive like lightning. It bleeds them slowly. This is the part of the process they never anticipated, the facet of divine justice that has taken them entirely by surprise. In their dramatic and ego-driven worldview, they thought that any consequences would come in the form of a single, rapid, and spectacular event, a sudden public exposure, a big scandal, a quick and cinematic demise. However, life and the intelligence of the cosmos seldom operate with such basic tools. The most painful and transforming type of punishment isn't one that knocks you down in one violent instant. It is the kind that gradually, systematically eats away at you, little by little, day by day, until you no longer recognize the person gazing back at you in the mirror. That is the exact kind of judgment this group is going through right now. At first glance, nothing seemed to be changed. They were still smiling, exuding confidence, and certain that their plots would succeed. However, over time, little, nearly invisible fractures started to appear. Their cash resources started to dwindle for no apparent reason. The primary connections they relied on for support started to seem weak and untrustworthy. The brazen confidence they projected in public began to weaken in small but evident ways. It wasn't a massive, spectacular collapse. It was the gradual, torturous disintegration of all they had believed was solid. And that, for a control-obsessed ego, is a much more horrifying reality than any sudden calamity, since they are forced to watch their own life crumble in excruciating slow motion. This steady bleed of karmic justice deprives them of the one thing they have always treasured above all else: power. When judgment strikes like a bolt of lightning, you can at least analyze the immediate effect and start rebuilding. However, when it happens gradually, drop by drop, you never know which aspect of your life will give way next. It maintains people in a permanent condition of high worry, a low-grade, never-ending torture. They wake up every morning, wondering what will go wrong today. Will it be their confidence in a buddy, their public image, their physical health, or their financial security? That's the exquisite torment of delayed justice. It makes them restless, sleepless, and completely helpless. The pride that drove their harmful conduct in the first place has exacerbated the process. They cannot explain to anybody what is really going on behind the scenes because doing so would mean admitting that they were wrong, that their judgment was faulty, and that their whole campaign against you has failed horribly. So they suffer in agonizing quiet, frantically attempting to preserve a facade of prosperity and stability that is already falling under them. What was once a beautiful triumph now seems like an unbreakable curse, since every win they claimed against you is turning into proof of their own demise. That is why this kind of decision is so definitive. It does not only punish, it thoroughly dismantles. It shatters them piece by piece, leaving just the stark, inevitable reality from which they can no longer escape. Their demise was not sudden. It was always unavoidable. They are not being put down. They are being bled dry. A message for the God Connection family. If what you're reading now strikes a chord deep inside you, know that you're not alone. This confirms that you are a part of a tremendous worldwide spiritual revolution. Our aim at God Connection is to serve as a lighthouse for anointed souls like you, providing a safe harbor where you may discover clarity, strength, and fellowship. Your being here, right now, increases the strength of this network. Please consider subscribing to our channel to help us continue to deliver this important message of truth and empowerment to those going through difficult times. By joining us, you will become a part of the answer. If you feel compelled to support our effort on a deeper level, please consider making a $10 gift via the Super Thanks button located just below this video. Consider it an energy exchange, an investment in the light that allows us to produce more material like this and reach every person who needs to hear it. Every gesture of assistance helps us fight the good fight. Thank you for being a valued member of the God Connection family. Now, let us proceed. 4. Betrayal always boomerangs. The words they hoped would fade into the shadows of their private meetings are suddenly displayed in the brilliant, merciless light, making them difficult to conceal. Every rumor, every hidden scheme, and every well-designed falsehood they devised to manipulate perception and damage your reputation has a strange way of coming back to them, stronger, sharper, and much more harmful than they could have predicted. They mistakenly imagined that the darkness could protect them, that their concealed plans would be eternally hidden. However, the truth has a tenacious and persistent tendency of following the trail of deception. Every blade they secretly hurled at your back, every trap they laid for your feet, and every effort they took to undermine you is now returning with pinpoint accuracy, striking at the very roots of their own life. They may not realize it yet, but the poisonous energy they used to destroy you is now slowly unraveling them. The falsehoods that were previously their main weapons are now the shackles that tie them, revealing their actual objectives to anybody who has eyes to see. Friends, co-workers, and casual onlookers are starting to see the trends, the tales that never seem to add together. The obvious contradictions, when taken together, give an irrefutable picture of their evil purpose. The treachery they thought was expertly disguised is now obvious in the slightest of ways, such as hairline fractures emerging in a wall that was never actually sturdy to begin with. It's poetry in its own harsh but lovely manner. The universe does not have to interfere directly with thunder and lightning. It just permits the flawless, impersonal rule of cause and effect to do its exquisite function. Every action has a reciprocal effect. Every effort to hurt you simply strengthens the divine system that will eventually defeat them. And what they previously believed was so clever, the manipulation, gossip, and secret agendas, has now become the same proof that reveals their real character to the world. The people they believed they could easily fool are now seeing through their weak facades. And now there is no one left to protect them from the unavoidable repercussions of their deeds. The lesson is both cruel and clear. Treachery is never a one-way path. It always bears a karmic debt, and in this cosmic game, all debts are finally collected, with no exceptions or compassion. They acted only for short-term advantage, ignoring the basic reality that every falsehood has its own life. Each gossip, knife in the back, and manipulation is now coming back to them, not as a baseless rumor, but as an indisputable, verifiable fact. And every time they glance around, they are reminded that the energy they used in attempting to harm others is now devouring them from inside. Finally, the only surprise is that they are just now learning this fact, much too late. 5. Internal cannibalism is always the way that group evil dies. No true, long-lasting relationship can be constructed on the poisonous mortar of jealousy, envy, or a common goal for destruction. It's a house of cards constructed on a fault line. What they thought was strength in numbers was really a terrible vulnerability disguised. Every conversation, every alleged agreement, and every handshake between them was motivated by mistrust and plain self-interest, not true trust or commitment. Their group was never a team. Rather, it was a powder keg waiting for the ultimate spark. And that spark was always certain to appear. When any type of stress, pressure, or a fresh chance for personal benefit emerges, the cracks in their veneer begin to appear. Small betrayals develop inside the group, one after the other, fueling the paranoia and distrust that leads to the next, until the group starts to turn on itself, eating itself alive. Words said in secret against you are now being used to accuse each other. Supposed devotion rapidly turns into self-preservation and bargaining. And partnerships forged only for convenience disintegrate under the first real weight of dread and consequence. Every member becomes both a hunter and a victim at the same time, since when an organization is founded on jealousy, the only language the members actually understand is betrayal. This emotional breakdown is so cruel since it is often imperceptible to the outer world until it is much too late. Outsiders may perceive a strong, cohesive front, but behind closed doors, skepticism is developing quicker than anybody could have predicted. They start attacking each other for little slights, imagined insults, and any chance to look superior or transfer responsibility. Every frantic effort to defend oneself becomes another weapon against the collective, accelerating the collapse. There is no external power required to pull them down. The poison they jointly placed into the system naturally runs back and turns against them, destroying all feeling of cohesiveness until nothing remains but a pile of rubble. This is the inherent rule governing all disastrous coalitions. The energy used on injuring others, particularly inside the group, never dissipates. It redirects inward, emerging as rampant paranoia, profound bitterness, and unavoidable self-sabotage. They can't keep harmony because they never appreciated it in the first place. They only value supremacy and survival at someone else's cost. Their cunning, manipulation, and brutality, which seem to make them so threatening at first, are the precise attributes that ensure their own demise. In the end, the group consumes itself, piece by piece. Friends become sworn foes. Leaders become liabilities. Alliances disintegrate into bitter anarchy. There is no spectacular climax or dramatic final showdown, just a silent, pitiful, and unavoidable self-destruction. What remains is an undeniable fact. Organizations founded on malice cannot thrive. Internal cannibalism does not discriminate. It destroys everyone involved, leaving only a cautionary story for those who are intelligent enough to avoid going down the same dark road. 6. You are untouchable because you have never played their game. Throughout the conversation, the group constantly misunderstood your quiet for weakness, which was a critical mistake of judgment. They thought that if you weren't obviously fighting back, throwing dirt, or participating in their drama, you were an easy target. They had no idea that quiet does not necessarily imply surrender. Sometimes it is the best tactic. It is a shield built on heavenly patience and a thorough comprehension of energy rules. While they were frantically moving their petty pieces on the chessboard, establishing traps, and urgently attempting to elicit a response from you, you were moving in a whole other plane. You were directed by a greater principle, alignment above reactivity. Their rules were never your rules, which is why none of their pitiful attempts could ever fully touch your soul. Every effort they made to influence, frighten, or agitate you failed, not by chance, but because you were functioning on a vibratory level they couldn't identify, much alone reach. Their energy, which was so fiercely focused on causing havoc and damage, was completely wasted against someone who simply refused to meet them on the low-vibration battleground they had created. You did not pursue their transient illusions of power or get caught in the juvenile games they devised. You remained steady, persistent, and committed to your own path, which was lit by a higher source. The more they attempted to drag you down, the more obvious it became to the universe that their techniques could never succeed. That untouchability is not the result of arrogance. It is the direct result of enormous spiritual discipline and insight. You understood, on an intuitive soul level, that every lie, conspiracy, and muttered act of sabotage was fleeting and unreal. You realized that responding to it would simply lock you in their dark, chaotic reality. Instead, you focused your valuable energy on self-alignment, alignment with truth, purpose, and the natural, beneficial flow of life. While they were feverishly attempting to control exterior results, you were silently becoming stronger, more luminous, and more conspicuous in ways they could never replicate or deny. The irony is horribly lovely. The more they struggled against you, the quicker they revealed their own darkness to the world, while your power remained silently cemented in the background. Finally, their fall is more than simply a narrative of failure. It demonstrates your spiritual immunity. You were not invincible because you were courageous or outspoken. You were invincible because you correctly declined to join their fraudulent arena. While they twisted themselves into a tornado of disorder, you walked on uninjured, slowly advancing as a natural result of your discipline and focus. The game they attempted to impose on you became absolutely unimportant, and now they're toppling under the enormous weight of their own failed schemes, while you stand absolutely outside of it all, untouchable, unshakable, and unquestionably triumphant. 7. The more they watch, the quicker they rot. Their preoccupation with you has become the source of their own downfall. Every hour they spent watching your travels, studying your patterns, and strategizing how to corner you was an hour taken away from their own lives, spiritual progress, and the real-world obligations and opportunities that really mattered. Their attention got so occupied by you that they lost track of themselves. And this kind of self-neglect is not subtle. It is corrosive, like an acid that eats away at the soul. What they fail to see is that fixation never strengthens the observer. Rather, it steadily kills them. Instead of investing their essential life force energy in their own advancement or purpose, they wasted it on surveillance, speculation, and jealousy. When the mind is linked to another person's life, it becomes a prison, continuously calculating, responding, and fretting. While they believed they were gaining a strategic edge by analyzing you, they were silently and deliberately undermining their own stability, relationships, and mental health. Every look they threw your way, every discussion they had about you, and every inaccurate assumption they made about your life hammered another nail into the coffin of their own clarity and control. Meanwhile, their disregard for their own path increases the disintegration. Bills start to pile up. Important tasks go unfulfilled. Their personal ties deteriorate, and their objectives fail to materialize. They are absolutely unaware of their own demise since their whole attention and concentration is devoted to the screen of your life. They are rotting from the inside out, devoured by a poisonous brew of comparison, jealousy, and paranoia, all the while pretending that everything in their lives is wonderful. The true tragedy is that they are completely unaware that this is occurring. The more they watch you, the less they notice their own deterioration, until one day they wake up to find themselves empty shells of the persons they once believed they were. The cruelest irony of all is that their preoccupation, which was supposed to give them some sort of control over you, has no detrimental impact on your path. You continue to create, grow, and thrive under their relentless scrutiny. Their negative energy fuels nothing except their own demise, and every effort they make to influence or foresee your next action exacerbates their downward spiral. In their frantic attempt to manage what was never theirs to control, they have utterly lost control of what was theirs to keep, their own lives. In the end, their failure is unavoidable. They rot not because you retaliated against them or interfered in any manner, but because obsession eats a person quicker than any external force can. The more they observed you, the quicker they lost themselves. And while they stay imprisoned by their fixation, your life continues unaffected, unstoppable, and free of their degradation. The narrative is more than simply a basic struggle between two individuals. It is a powerful monument to the notion of inevitability. Every move they took, every whisper they said, every plot they devised, and every desperate effort to control reality was certain to come back to them. This is not due to chance or luck, but rather to the global rules of truth, alignment, and divine justice, which work on a far higher level than petty human calculation. They stupidly believed they were in charge of the game. They assumed that their numbers, perceived authority, and cunning would protect them from any serious repercussions. They failed to see that their own decisions were the main architects of their collapse. And while they scrambled in increasing panic, the inexorable road of inevitability continued unabated. Join the God Connection movement. If this message resonates with you and confirms what your spirit has been teaching you all along, join our community. This is more than simply a channel. It is a collective movement of awakened beings. Please subscribe to the God Connection channel, like this video, and leave a comment below with your own experiences. Your testimony provides others strength. Don't forget to forward this video to anybody you know who needs to see this truth right now. Your contribution is what allows us to distribute these profound, life-changing ideas and keep this important discourse alive. If you feel compelled to support our work, You may do so by clicking the Super Thanks button. Press all of those buttons, and let's watch this tale of divine justice develop together. God bless you.